Alrighty, this is just We the People News. Alright, this video is without prejudice or recourse. I'm not waiving any of my rights. Alright, which is kind of interesting because I came across this video and check it out, y'all. The one thing I want to do, bring up to y'all's attention, everything I say or do, is just my opinions, and I'm just learning as well as some of y'all out there. Right? So I'm not an attorney, so I am not giving any legal advice. Alright, and whatever the videos say or do is not upon me because I'm still not giving legal advice. Alright, my last video was talking about making a claim, but he was talking about when he was making a claim how he used a deal as officers. But since I came across this video, I wanted to kind of bring up a deal because, once again, I don't look just straightforward. I always look around me, be able to protect myself by any means necessary. And sometimes you got to think outside the box to better protect yourself. Sometimes you must enter the box to protect yourself. But somehow or another, you got to figure out the best way for you. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and proceed forward on this.
What's up, people? Tonight, I want to actually talk about something that we have gone over a couple times, but I want to go into a different portion of how to go into court and hold them liable. And this portion is actually going to be gathering evidence or understanding.
It's not what you know, it's what you can prove.
It's not what you know, it's what you can prove. Appreciate that from Denzel. The case that I want to deal with tonight is the 6 Alpharetta police officers that were involved in dragging a 65-year-old woman out of her vehicle because, one, she asked for a supervisor, which he refused, and second, because she refused to sign the ticket without having an explanation what the ticket itself was for or what to do, once she signed it. The question that's asked at the beginning of this video is, can the police officer force you to sign a contract? Let's get into that right now. Now, as I spoke about before, in contract law, there are 4 different entities of a contract to make it whole. But all of it has to be done with things called clean hands and done in good faith. Now, as I spoke about in a much earlier video, I believe it was video 3, where I spoke about contracts themselves, where you're going to hear the terms of clean hands and good faith. But I used the words, there are the biggest words in law. If, and, or. These words are big because they're often left out of communications from police officers. Just like we use the words reasonable suspicion of a crime, that is so often left out. Is the of a crime left out? The reason I use that one is because it has to be part of the actual articulation. And I used the court case, U.S. v. Fleckinger, 397 U.S. 203, 1970. Parties to a contract have an obligation to operate with full disclosure and honesty, acting in good faith and with clean hands. Even in the domain of private contract law, the author of a standard form agreement is required to state its terms with clarity and candor. That was asked by this young woman that was pulled out, this 65-year-old woman that was pulled out of a car. She was asking for candor and clarity. And the police officer attempted to force her to sign it. And when she chose not to sign it, without candor and clarity. He called in backup, which then in turn 6 other officers acted in concert. These are things that you normally hear when you hear police officers talking about gangs or those that are involved in a enterprise where they have a base of operation. Well, in this manner, the base of operation was the police station, and the acting in concert was those that participated in dragging this woman out of a car to violate her constitutional rights of being able to act freely within a contract. The quick idea of a contract. First thing of a contract is the offer. When you're handed a citation, that's the offer. Your acceptance is when you say, okay, this is my citation. Now, the one thing that's going to be missing is consideration. Why? Because they're not handing you consideration. What the state wants you to believe when they're handing you this contract or citation, that the consideration is something of value. And they want you to believe that the value is the participation in a privilege. Now, let's say I'm not participating in a privilege. Why? Because I am not doing anything that deals with commerce. Because the privilege is commerce. I'm not participating in commerce. I'm just going to or from work. So, is there consideration? That answer is no. Now, the agreement is the actual signature on the contract. Now, if there is no agreement because there is no candor and there is no clarity, can they force you to agree to that contract? Now, I'm going to back up just for half a second. As I spoke in a previous video, which I'm going to add the links to both of those videos in the description. Previously, I had spoke about the Separation of Powers Act. When we talk about the Separation of Powers Act, that is the separation between judicial branch of the government, the executive branch of the government, and the legislative branch of the government. Police officers take their oath as an executive officer. As an executive officer, because of the Separation of Powers Act, he cannot or she cannot perform judicial duties. Now, we know that the citation is a violation of the Separation of Powers Act. Why? Because it has a court date on it. So, therefore, an executive officer is performing judicial duties by handing you information that deals with the judicial branch of the government. We're going to go back to the most important part of this video, and it's the fact, can he or she force you as a police officer to sign a contract? That answer is going to be no. And here's why. The things that void a contract: lack of capacity. Now, that will be if you are inebriated. If they are looking at something and for some reason your judgment is impaired, whether it's emotional stress, whether it's physical stress, whether it's chemical stress, you are unable to sign or have clarity. See how that works from U.S. v. Suckler? Undue influence. One tactic that they use for undue influence is say, if you do not sign it, I'm going to take you to jail. That sounds like a threat. And a threat of your liberty is undue influence. Let's say it's a mistake. I wasn't trying to give it to you, I was trying to give it to somebody else. Your name just happened to be there. Or, not to kind of throw shade on it, but you have an officer that uses the word arm's length. Remember we had that video? Yeah, I'm going to stick that in here too. But you have an officer that charges 64 people with a dime bag of weed and using the words arm length. That would be a mistake. So those are automatically void. Coercion. That would also fall under the aspects of undue influence. Because coercion is, you sign this ticket or you going to jail. That sounds like coercion. Because again, that's a threat to your liberty. Duress. Duress will be grabbing someone out of their car without a warrant. Threatening their liberty. That voids the contract. Let's say public policy, such as if you don't sign this ticket, you're going to jail. That's policy. That is against the law. Alright, now comes to one of my favorite parts of any video, and it's the recourse. How do I address this? I'm gonna let my man Denzel say it one more time.
It all starts with a smile. To show you care, offer.
And Denzel say it one more time.
It's not what you know, it's what you can prove.
The first thing that you do is get the report from the incident, which is the police report. Why? It's because that is the officer's sworn statement of the entire incident. Now, we also know whenever they stop or restrict your locomotion, they have to have probable cause. We also know probable cause has to come from a crime. And in order for them to stop your locomotion, they had to have witnessed a crime. Incident report is not going to say they witnessed a crime. So the stop is illegal. Now, do they have something from a judge? 99.9% of the time, no. So the stop is illegal. Now let's say they have a credible witness because there was damage to personal property, or they have a witness that has given them credible information prior. Because if they didn't, they don't have anything to stop you for because it's not a crime. But now you have their words, theirs, without any interest behind it. You have their words. You can't argue against yourself. Then, number two, you go get their oath of office. Why? Because the oath of office illustrates a fiduciary duty to you. They are working for your benefit, and their oath of office that they signed actually states that they are working towards your benefit. They signed it and agreed to that. By stopping you and violating your constitutionally protected rights, your God-given rights, they've just admitted to breaching that duty.
Now, I know he didn't clarify this, but I do know he knows this. But the cops are working for the interests of the courts in the city, and the sheriffs are working for the interests of the county. They're gathering up revenue. But you hold them accountable with that oath, because that is a contract to you, foremost. Okie-dokie.
Now, in some states, such as Georgia, and I believe I know of 4 counties, they have an insurance bond. You go and get a copy of that. Why? Because, remember a couple videos back where I spoke about their bond is something that is held if they commit fraud, and you don't have to be harmed by it. You can be inconvenienced, and they are still liable to you. Next, once you have those 3 things, you file a motion for discovery. Well, why do I do that? The motion for discovery is, again, you're using all of their tools that they use against you. and you're gathering evidence because they can't argue with themselves. You ask for any and all video, audio, which were included with that stop, but not limited to their body cams, because you know they're not going to willfully turn that over, or their dashboard cams, which they're not going to willfully turn over, because again, we know for a fact 76% of all video does not come from police. They're not going to turn it over. We constantly complain about the blue wall. Guess what? They're not going to turn it over. They're not going to tell on themselves. But they're going to give you a lot of things that they don't think will hurt them, especially for a traffic citation. Then, my favorite part is any and all calls that are related to that stop. So therefore, if there is a witness or someone giving them information to stop your locomotion, they have to turn that over. If there was a 911 call regarding your stop, they have to turn that over. Once they call it in that they're pulling you over, they have to turn that over. If there are any calls after that, once they have you in custody or once they've stopped you, they have to turn that over. Now, the great thing about that is the fact that because most of them don't do the right thing, or they embellish about what the right thing is, they have no idea what they're actually looking at or turning over, because they think they're doing the right thing. What you do then is you take the contract apart, you take the stop apart, but you don't go into anything that has nothing to do with your citation. Then, once that citation is dismissed, you have the one thing that they can no longer dispute. Because you're going to go get a copy of that judge's order stating that that citation, or whatever it was dismissed. You get a copy of that. Once you get a copy of that, you now have the citation. You have the police report, the oath of office.
Speaking of dismiss, try to get it with prejudice.
The officer's statements. You also have the discovery file, which will be any and all audio that is pertaining to that, even if you don't have your own audio and video, which I recommend always have your own audio and video, because that is the only guarantee that you will have for going into court. You also have this great thing, such as Instagram Live and Facebook Live and Periscope. And the reason these apps exist in the video filming form that they do have is the fact that police officers cannot delete the videos because they are automatically saved. And those are the reasons these videos and the platforms they have.
And I would go even so far, if that was the case, give them a notice of liability that do not mute or tamper with your evidence while they are recording you and you are recording yourself. Okay? If anything is tampered with my evidence, then that would be a $50,000 fine, and if it's tampered, you agree to this terms.
And the means of having it is why they exist, because police were deleting videos. So now they cannot delete the videos unless they go on to your social media sites. So having that, you now file a complaint against them and sue them in their personal capacity for violating their fiduciary duty, for violating or for breaching their fiduciary duty, and violating the constitutional rights that were fought and defended by those in our armed forces. Because it is an absolute disgrace for anyone that has gone out and fought, lived, died, watched their friends die, to defend the Constitution, and them to go out here and blatantly disregard those efforts, those acts, those deaths, and say that it's okay to go out here and not uphold the actual law of this land. And they don't deserve to wear the badge. They don't deserve to wear the uniform. And until next time.
Alright.
How to escape the heat if you don't have an air.
This is Diesel We the People News. Again, just never look straight forward. Always look around you. You never know the information you're going to get to be able to protect yourself by any means necessary. Always think outside the box. Always think inside the box. Okay? Till next time. Diesel We the People News. Bye, y'all.